Story, which is it's a true story. Well, my dad said it was a true story, so you'll have to take it up with him. So he told me this. Actually, it's quite fitting you're here, Hazel, because he told me this straight after you were born, and it was up in St Thomas's Hospital up in London, and he never spoke about it before, and he never spoke about it after, and none of the family ever were told this story. I think it freaked them out too much. So anyway, just a bit of background. So my dad, Robert McKee, was born in 1923 on the 4th of January, and that's quite an important date. So remember the 4th of January.
4th of January.
Over 100 years ago, the 4th of January, 1923. 1923. Yeah, long time ago. And a smart kid, but in those days you left school at 14. You didn't stay on. There was no going to uni or anything like that. So he left school, got jobs and things, and then his dad died when he was 18 and he had to look after 6 siblings. He was responsible for 6 siblings. So he decided he'd get 2 or 3 jobs, and then he thought, well, do you know what, I need a career for the future. So at the age of 18 he decided, I'll go and see if I can train as a nurse. So he went up to City Hospital in Belfast and he got accepted there for his nurse's training, and he did 3 years up there. So not content with that, he then decided he wanted to do mental health nursing. So he got accepted in the psychiatric hospital, and he did 2 years in what was called Purdysburn. I don't know if any of you know what that is, but it's now Knockbracken Healthcare Park up in Belfast. So he did. Back in the day, it was the asylum.
Do you know it well?
It was the asylum back in the day, and it was just wards full of patients that were varying degrees of mental illness. I mean, if you got anxious in those days, they admitted you to the hospital. If you had a serious illness, everybody went in, and a lot of people never came out. So he worked in Ward 24, which was the lock-up ward for male patients. And he started working there at the age of 23. And on the 4th of January, it was his birthday, and he was on the night shift. And the psychiatric nurses are great ones for taking the mick out of each other and playing pranks. So when he went into work, they had stuck a thing on the back of his jacket saying, "Kiss me, it's my birthday." So all the staff coming in were giving him kisses and wishing him happy birthday, and he thought, oh, this is great, you know, loved it. He was a bit of a womanizer, he loved it. And so anyway, what used to happen on the night shift, they had Ward 24, the lock-up ward for the males, and then Ward 25 was the lock-up ward for the females. And that was like 500 yards down the road. And in between the two, they had like a glass tunnel, which sort of, you know, it linked them. So if there was ever an incident in one ward, staff could go down, run down to the other ward without having to go outside, and etc. So anyway, he's on the night shift, and it's his turn to go down toward 25 to relieve the staff for their breaks. So the way it works is, the keys, they get a big bunch of keys, they let you out the door, you go into this porch, and when the door's shut behind you, there's another big set of doors which you can open and go out into the tunnel. So my dad, he was called Robert, but they all called him Bertie back in the day. So Bertie got let out into the tunnel, and like, my dad was a man not to be reckoned with. He was a big man, could be quite intimidating, and not scared of anything or anybody, bit of a Liam Neeson character. And not much scared my dad, but there'd been lots of, you know, these old places over the years, they get a lot of history, and people say, oh, you hear things and there's stuff goes on here and there. And my dad would say, that's a load of rubbish, don't believe in any of that stuff. So he gets let out into the tunnel, and he's walking down this glass tunnel, and there's no lights in it. On the right hand side was the old mortuary, which had been abandoned 30 years before and relocated. And on the left hand side of the tunnel they had like the pathology lab where they used to do all the postmortems and stuff. But again, all empty, lots of old machines and stuff in there, but no lights. He's gone down this tunnel, and as he's gone down the tunnel, he says he just started to feel this ice cold sensation. Now it was the 4th of January, he said it was cold, but at the end of the day he said it wasn't that cold. The temperature just dropped 15 degrees instantly. And he said the hairs on the back of his neck just started to stand up, and he started thinking about all the creepy things he'd heard about things that went on in the hospital, and he thought, no, it's just a load of rubbish, I don't believe any of that. So just carried on walking, and he carried on walking, and he just said he just felt a presence next to him. He said, I can't quantify it any other way, but I felt a presence next to me. And he said, I stopped in the middle of the tunnel, and he said, I looked into the glass to see if there was anything in the pathology lab. Couldn't see anything in there. Looked over to the right, into the old mortuary. Couldn't see anything in there. But as he was looking through the glass, he saw a shadow behind him. Oh. So he turned around really quick, but there was nothing there, right? Nothing there. So he said at this point in time, his heart was starting to race, and he was starting to get quite scared. So he started walking really quick to try and get down the tunnel as quick as he could. And he said the more he went, the quicker he went, he said he could feel some breath or air or something on his face following him down the tunnel. And he started running toward 25 and banging on the door and buzzing on the thing to get in. And as he stood waiting, something kissed him on the cheek.
Oh.
Nobody there.
T-shirt saying kiss me.
Nobody there. Not a soul there. And he's banging on the door, let me in. And the staff opened the door. Jesus, Bertie, what's the matter with you? And he says, oh my God. He said, there's something in the tunnel. And they're going, what do you mean there's something in the tunnel? He says, there's something in the tunnel. He says, I could feel something in the tunnel. It touched me. And he said, it kissed me on the cheek. And they were going, Jesus, it's your birthday. Have you been on the sauce? And he's going, no, I haven't been on the sauce. He said, seriously, there's something weird in the tunnel. And then they saw the thing on the back of his thing, and they were saying, oh, for God's sake, they're just pranking you. It's the ones at the Ward 24. It's your birthday. You know what they're like. They're probably doing something. They've probably got something going on. So they settled him down, and they had a chat, and they went off and had their breaks. And by the time 2 or 3 hours had gone past, he was sort of thinking, yeah, you know, I was probably a bit spooked, and probably nothing going on there. It was probably all my imagination and this blah blah blah. So then it was time to go back to Ward 24. So they got the big bunch of keys, let him out into the porch, and he got in the porch and he opened the doors to go back up to Ward 24. And as soon as he opened the doors, he said there was like an ice cold front on his face, just right. He said it was like somebody was standing in front of my face like that, and it was just icy cold. And he said, I couldn't move. I couldn't actually physically move. He said, I was just stuck there. And he said, I stood there for absolutely ages thinking, what the hell is going on here? This is not a prank. This can't possibly be a prank. So he started walking very slowly. And again, he said, there was this presence around him, and he could feel something breathing on his face. And as he got halfway up the tunnel, he said something brushed past him on his shoulder. And he started going like this here. Who's there? Who's there? What's happening? Who's there? Who are you? Who are you? And nothing, absolutely nothing. And his heart was going like the clappers. And he started running, and he started running, and he started running until he nearly got to the lab. And as he got nearly to the door, he heard this female voice saying to him, it was a mistake. Well, he said he just banged on the door. He was absolutely terrified. Got in there, he was in such a state. Staff sat him down, went to the medicine cupboard and got him a thing of whiskey, which they used to keep for patients to let him sleep at night. And he sat in with a glass of this whiskey, and he said they all knew something happened because of just the way he was. You know, it just wasn't him at all. So he sat there for a few hours, and he thought, what the hell's going on? He says, I am never going in that tunnel again. I'm never going in that tunnel again. And to this day, well, the tunnel is now a corridor, but we'll come to that later. But none of the nurses would go in that tunnel after that, because they knew Bertie, something had happened to Bertie in the tunnel, and Bertie wasn't a man to be reckoned with, so definitely something had happened. So the tunnel was closed, and all the nurses used to walk the half-mile round to the ward. They wouldn't go in there. They wouldn't go in there after that. So anyway, a few months later, he got transferred to Ward 25, which was the female lock-up ward. And this had been on his mind the whole time. You know, he was just trying to make sense of this, and he just couldn't make sense of it at all. And he hadn't told anybody in the family. The only people that knew about it were the ones on shift that night. And of course, they had told people something's going on in the tunnel. But he was in Ward 25, and night shift, not an awful lot to do sometimes. But what they had in Ward 25 was, if you came into hospital, everybody came into hospital had a file, and the file was kept in a cupboard, in a box, till the day and hour you died or whatever. And he thought, you know what? He said, something was saying to me, go and check the files, go and look at the files in the office, because the hospital had been taking patients in since 1820 or something, and he thought he couldn't get over this thing, it's a mistake, you know, he just couldn't figure out what that was all about, and he thought, I'm hearing stuff. But anyway, he started looking through these files, one box, another box, another box, 2-3 weeks in, there's not really anything sort of standing out to him, and then he opens this box, and right on the top of the box was this file, Hazel McKee. And he thought, well, that's an unusual name, like, because you don't usually get McKees. I've never seen a McKee in here before. And then he sort of thought, that's
Is
interesting.
this after you told him Hazel had been named Hazel?
No. This is way back in the 40s.
No, I mean, did he tell you this story after Hazel
Just
had been
you
named?
wait. Be patient, be patient.
Alright.
So anyway, he found this file, Hazel McKee, and he thought, it's interesting. So those files, you had the patient's name and number, then the admission sheet, then it was all their property and the reason for their admission, and then the consultant's report, and all this one thing on top of the other. So he went into the admission sheet, and it said, Hazel McKee, parents Robert and Margaret McKee. Now that was his grandparents and his parents' name, ironically.
What?
Yeah, so he said, right, this is quite bizarre. Then he looked at the address, Brownlow Street in Cumber,
I know that street.
and he thought, you know, that was my grandfather's home in Brownlow Street in Cumber. And then he remembered being told when he was young that his grandfather had a sister and she had disappeared when she was 17. And he thought, I'll look at her date of birth. She was born in 1900 and she disappeared in something like 1917. And he looked at the file, and this Hazel McKee had been admitted to the ward in 1917. Reason for admission, unruly behaviour, antisocial, compulsive lying, aggression, assaulted her parents, things that most teenagers will have a go at nowadays, you know. And they had sort of language for it back then, which we don't have now. But he was reading this sheet, and he just thought, this is not coincidence. He thought, this has definitely got to be this Hazel McKee that he'd heard about. But what the family had said was she'd run off with some fella, which was their want in those days. It happened a lot, because 2 of my dad's brothers ran off and never were seen for decades. So it wasn't unbelievable, but that was what they told everybody, that Hazel had run off with this fella, and nobody questioned it at all. So then he started reading the file. So she came in November, and then by February they discovered she was pregnant with child, and she was quite feisty on the ward. She was constantly trying to get out, argumentative with staff, getting up to mischief with the other patients, you know, sort of trying to get them into trouble and stuff like that. Quite a character, but not really engaging with the staff on the ward. She didn't really want to have anything to do with the medics or anything like that. And so month by month he was reading all these notes about Hazel McKee and what was going on with her. And they had tried to contact her parents. They'd written to the parents to inform them that she was pregnant, or they wanted to discuss it with them, and they'd invited their parents to come in and said, can you please attend the meeting with the consultant on such and such a date? We want to discuss your daughter's problem. Nothing. Didn't turn up for the appointment. Another letter was sent out about 3 weeks later, offering another appointment. Nobody turned up. I mean, they didn't have phones in those days, you know, there was no such thing as emails. The only way you contacted anybody was if you met them in person or you sent them a letter. So there was these letters, several of these letters, and then she eventually gave birth to a daughter on the 4th of August. And more notes in the file. Gave birth in the maternity unit. Adoption agency contacted and attending at the maternity unit. And then Hazel dispatched back to the ward on such and such a date. About a week later, childless, obviously, the child had gone up for adoption. And then notes were, appears to be quite withdrawn, is not attending to her personal hygiene, is not interacting with any of the staff, not eating well, losing weight. You could just see the general deterioration in her physical and mental state. Concerns about it right into the family. Nobody responded. Nobody came to visit her. She never had one visitor on the ward. 17 years old, you know, which was, I think she was 18 at the stage. And so then eventually there was a note, 4th of January the following year, a year to the day after she was admitted to the ward. Patient not couldn't find her, couldn't locate the patient. 5:10 in the morning, patient couldn't be found anywhere. 6:15, patient discovered in the bathroom with a ligature around her neck. Pronounced dead at 6:30, dispatched to the mortuary. End of Hazel. No other mention about her ever again. And my dad told me this because, see, when you were born and we were up in the hospital, and I said, we're going to call her Hazel, he says, listen, he says, could you not call her Natasha or something like that? And I'm going,
Why are you telling us that?
yeah, and I'm going, like, Dad, it's the way you pronounce it, you know, Natasha, that's not going to sound any good. So I said, no, we've named her, and it's all done and dusted, the register's been in, and we've named her Hazel. And that was when he told me that story. He said it just freaked him out so much, because he thought that was the only other time he'd ever come across a Hazel, and it was his aunt or whatever, great aunt. But he says, I've never told anybody else that story, because he said at the end of the day nobody would ever believe me, and he said, I don't want you to ever tell your mum or tell anybody else that story. And I said, I never told anybody. Never told your dad.
Never told us.
Nobody.
Until today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
First time.
Yeah, and I think he would be up there saying, well done for telling him now. Because it doesn't matter anymore, you know, it's so long ago. But like, I believed him, because when he was telling the story, I could see he was reliving everything in his mind, and it was just all coming back to him, and it sort of freaked me out a bit at the time. But the family were never made aware of that.
Maybe. That would be cool.
But
She's getting to live her best life now.
Should have had.
Yeah.
How sad is that?
I know.
so that was a sort of real life ghost story with a bit of a twist, because it's a family thing and a bit of an irony. And like, years after that, I used to go to the social work department up there, mental health, and you know, the staff would still talk about that particular part of the hospital, that people don't like going in there. And I was in the social work department one day, and the secretary was in there, and I was doing a report, got to about 4:30. I says, can I stay on and do this report? And she says, well, you'll have to go to the nurses station in one of the wards. She said, because none of us stay here after 5 o'clock. And I said, why is that? And she said, we just don't. And I said, why? And she said, because things happen here and people hear stuff, and there's been a whole legacy of things over the years. And I said, yeah, I'd heard stuff like that. I said, you know, my dad had mentioned stuff like that years ago, but I said it was the old mortuary. And she said, this is the old mortuary.
So
The social work department was the old mortuary. Well, I couldn't get out of there quick enough. And I never went back. Never went back to the social
So
work
what do you
department.
think that she meant when she said it was a mistake?
Oh, that was the thing in the files. Yes, sorry, that was the important bit. So anyway, she wasn't
Good job,
communicating. She wasn't communicating with the staff, but she just kept rocking backwards and forwards like this, and she just kept saying, "It's a mistake. It's a mistake. It's a mistake. It's a mistake."
That was written in the report.
And it was that he said that's when he really freaked out, because that was exactly what he heard. It's a mistake, and he said he knew then that it wasn't his imagination. He didn't make that up.
I wonder what her mistake was.
Yeah,
No.
what was she trying to? What was
He
she
never found that
Let's,
out.
let's not ask these questions. Do past life regression.
Which one of us was
This was a mistake.
It was a mistake, wasn't
That
it?
was definitely a surprise.
Okay.
Not a mistake then.
4 was the surprise, but 3 was the mistake.
And no more mention of what happened to the baby. Just went to the adoption
So there's
agency.
another
That could
family
be out
member out
there.
there.
Yeah,
Could be
I figured out.
Yeah, I've got a DNA test for my birthday.
I figured out if that daughter was alive now, she would be 105.
Right, so she's
She
dead.
could have there could be a
Yeah, but her
granddaughter.
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But she could
yeah.
be here
But she,
right
yeah.
now.
Shall we get the Ouija board
Guys,
out?
it's
So yeah.
Thing is,
fascinating, though.
after me and Steve split up, I didn't want to change my name back to Fromdigan because it's a horrible name. And people said to me, you can change it back to your mum's maiden name, so I would have been Hazel McKee. And the only reason I didn't was because Hannah had become a McKee, and I thought it would be a bit weird for her. if
I wouldn't mind it.
Vanessa McKee.
Well, that would have been a bit weird, that wouldn't it?
I think about it a lot how weird it is that Hannah has the same last name as
Yeah,
Nana, even though
it
you
is
have
weird.
been married since then. Especially because I don't really
Yeah, it's like
remember
complete coincidence.
like that happening. So it's just like
Yeah.
all my life, Hannah and Nanny have had the exact same last name, and it's
Oh.
like, why is that?
Yeah, yeah, it's
When I
not,
first met
not even anything to do with her.
Remember when I first met David, you said his name's McKee, and I said, oh, interesting. 'cause
Maybe he's related to
Well,
Have you checked?
didn't people
That's why we
used to
know how
say
kids-
to you didn't people used to say you and David looked alike at school and stuff?
Yeah.
And then when I met David's dad, I introduced myself. I said, oh, I'm Hannah's mum, I'm Marian. And he says, my name's Robert McKee. And I said, what? And he said, my name's Robert McKee. I said, that was my dad's name.
That is weird. That is weird.
But I thought, there's a lot of ironies in life, you know, and I don't know. But anyway, that was all very weird. And
But how cool is it that our family member was a ghost that shut down the tunnel?
Yeah.
She is slaying.
We're like, let's think of the important things here.
nobody
Give
would
that
ever
person
go
to
on
everyone.
about it.
Credit for
So that was
Oh.
Purdysburn.
Her life has
Purdysburn,
meaning.
not Brecon Healthcare Partner.
So if you go in there now, which building is it?
I've no idea. I've been in there I have never been in the social work department again.
But where was the social work
Is
department?
this not Brackham?
Yeah,
I know not Brackham.
yeah.
And I'll tell you why.
Anyway,
I'll tell you why.
He spent a couple of years.
Oh. In there. But once that
That's
had
why we
been
never
gone,
see you.
worked for years at Knockbracken because that became after it was a healthcare centre,
Mhm.
an equine centre.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know Knockbracken Park very well, but as an equine centre.
There you go.
Why
Yes, they
don't
have.
we
Very
start
weird.
gonna have haunted horses?
So when you go in, where's the
I
social
don't know
work?
where it is now. I mean, they've moved things around over the years. I've no
The
clue where it is
buildings
now.
though.
They've put new buildings in. and
Buildings have been
A
destroyed at
lot of
Knockbracken. over the
a lot
years.
of charities and ancillary sort of services have moved in, like council workers and ambulances, and so everything has shifted around so much now. So I don't even know where the social department is now.
So I want to know, where did you get the inspiration for the name Hazel then? Did it just pop in your head?
Yeah,
well,
was it
actually, we
from
took
that,
a
or-
while to think what to call Hazel because we couldn't decide on anything. I wanted to call her Alice, and your dad said no, I don't like that. He says I don't like Alice, and then we chose a couple of other names and we couldn't
He wanted
agree.
to call me Daisy, I think.
Huh?
He said he wanted to
Imagine
call
you
me
were called
Daisy.
Daisy.
Yeah,
That's
that's
a
he used
bit
to
weird.
sing that song.
That's what he used to sing that song. I never heard him say want to call you Daisy. He never told me that. But anyway,
I think that Hazel works quite well from on there.
Yeah, that's like the perfect
It's
name.
definitely your name, but I want to know who thought of it first and why.
I don't know. We just both agreed it. One or other of us said, "What about Hazel?" Because it was not a name that
It's not a very common name.
wasn't
It was
common
in
at
the
the
top
time.
10 girls' names last year.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah,
Would
it's
be,
really
if I
good
have a
then.
boy, I'm calling it Hazel.
No, honestly.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Me and Emily both agree on
Yeah,
that.
that's
Hazel
very cool.
is
It's
an
such a cute
amazing
boy's
name.
But
for
wait, what
a boy.
about 7?
But it'll go with his red
No.
hair.
Wait, what about soda? No. That's like Clodagh.
So
So yeah, we both agreed. Both said she looks like a Hazel, and because Grandma.
That's because that ghost was whispering. in
Yes, was it called?
Yes. Grandma came up and she said, "What you calling her?" And we said, "We're going to call her Hazel." And she sort of hummed and hawed a wee bit, and then she sort of said, "Yeah," she said she does look like a Hazel, whatever that meant. But the consensus, apart from my dad freaking out, was yeah, that was nice. It was unusual. It was different, and it was, you know, nobody else had that name at the time, so it just came from out there.
It came from Hazel.
From Hazel McKee.
Yeah, it was your doing.
Let's not start freaking her out.
That
I wonder what she
my
looked
friend
like.
Victoria that you think is a fruitcake.
Oh, she is.
I don't
She is she is a bit fruitcake, but I like
We
her.
know
Yeah,
she's
I
a
like her.
fruitcake.
What's a fruitcake?
Yeah, she was the one who
Mm.
came round and scared the life out of you when you were having those night terrors because she was trying to, like, you know, get rid of the evil energy in the house.
I remember
But she
that.
said there's an old lady following me around everywhere.
Oh, it's Hazel. Oh no, Hazel.
So
she
young.
is
She's
here
young.
now.
Oh my god. Wait,
Well,
no,
he was
everyone.
only young.
If Hazel was in the room.
No, we're not doing that now.
You don't read the
You
sign in the
behave yourself.
Sign in the bathroom. It's fine out
You
here.
get back to your medical rest.
That's true, I'm sorry. I forgot about the sign. I'm gone. I'm gone.
Alan down
I
there.
knew it was there.
Parcel going very seriously.
Well,
you didn't die, did you?
Yes.
I had a spooky experience.
You, Alan,
It's
was
not.
there.
Let's hear it.
Alright, here we go.
It's only a very short story.
Perfect.
Oh, is this the
Still
damn show one?
Yeah.
Damn show one. That's a good
One of
one.
these things, because you always expect spooky things to happen, like at night and in spooky places.